Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code Stardust to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we're going back a few years to look at issue 18 from Charles Soule's run on the Marvel comic Darth Vader. But before we slip to the dark side and do that, Jay, where can we be found around the internet?
We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we're talking about Darth Vader number 18, which is called A Bad Ground. Again, this was from Charles Soule's run. This came out in 2017, if I remember correctly. If not, then the beginning of 2018. In addition to Charles Soule's work as writer, layouts are provided by Giuseppe Camicoli. Finishes are by Daniel Orlandini. Colors by David Curiel. Cover art by Giuseppe Camicoli again and Elia Bonanetti. Letterer was by VC's Joe Caramagna, and then the editorial was Heather Antos, Tom Groneman, Jordan D. White, and Mark Panacea. So, Jay, I had read this before. I think this was the first time you had read it. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you recommended this, because when we were trying to kind of get our calendar ready for all of our upcoming shows and some ideas for things, and just out of the blue, you're like, have you ever read this? And I'm like, no. And you said, it'll blow your mind. And you were right. This is the story I never knew I always needed in my life for Star Wars. So good call.
Yeah, it's really a one-shot story in Darth Vader. And in most cases, in the ongoing titles, stories spanned 3 to 5 issues, mainly so that they can like collect them and publish them as a graphic novel later, or as a trade paperback. But I said, this one stood alone, and it comes right before the Darth Vader's Castle series. Can't remember. Did we talk about that one before?
I believe we did. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like right before that.
Okay.
And Darth Vader is calling in a favor from Governor Tarkin. And if my memory serves, in an earlier story arc from Darth Vader, Vader let Tarkin do something on Mon Calamari while they were subjugating the planet and doing some things there. And the agreement was that Vader would someday call in his favor. Well, he does it here. And basically what he tells Governor Tarkin is, assemble a team and try and hunt me down and kill me. And so they do this. They go to Chandar's Folly and they stage a hunt. And the story begins on day 9. Tarkin makes mention how he started with 20 men and is now down to 8. And then their prey, Darth Vader. So what'd you think of that introduction?
Well, because I'd never read this before and I had really no frame of reference for how or why this story was taking place, I was kind of thrown for a loop at first, because I knew just based upon the cover and what I was looking at that it was going to have something to do with Darth Vader. but I didn't know what the context was. And
Mhm.
so I just thought that it was really brilliant the way that the story kind of picks up in the middle and
Mhm.
then kind of goes forward and then goes back again. And of course, Charles Soule is just I'm always so impressed with him regardless of what medium he writes in as far as novels or comics or whatever, but, I mean, this is just further proof of his brilliance in writing, and so I loved the way that this was formatted, and it really captured my attention from the very first panel.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% there. I have his autograph on a couple of his novels, mainly through a Kickstarter campaign that I've done. But if I was to meet him in person and had the opportunity to get him to sign something, it would be a copy of this issue of this
Oh,
comic.
wow.
This is just one of my favorite pieces of his work. I think the story is
Mhm.
outstanding. And right, you didn't understand the backstory to this. And to be frank, the first time I read this, I didn't understand that Tarkin was why Tarkin was hunting Vader here. Yeah, that it gets revealed later in the comic. But again, it springs out of this Vader calling in a debt from Tarkin. And so, like you said, we come in middle of the hunt. It's ninth day. They're down to 8, and the hunting party is getting their gear together and they're ready to resume the hunt. And there's this woman named Jegra, and she says, "You need to check this out because something has changed." And we see Darth Vader kind of posing on this edge of this rock face cliff, and he's wearing the hide of this predator that is called a Valeth. And why that's remarkable is the Valeth is the apex predator of this world, and its skin contains a unique chromatophore that allows it to blend into the background. And the best way I can describe it is it's like the predator when he uses
Yes.
his camouflage in the
Yeah.
movie Predator.
It's like an invisibility cloak,
Yeah.
basically.
And what makes this even more impressive is, is that Tarkin stole Vader's lightsaber.
Mhm.
And Vader managed to still kill this thing just using his hands in the Force.
Yeah, yeah, because you see Vader's lightsaber just dangling from Tarkin's belt. And so right from the get-go, you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening. This is incredible."
hmm So we next get this scene where Tarkin is talking about the preparations he made to hunt Darth Vader. And he knew that because Darth Vader has a lightsaber, blasters are essentially useless to him. He just kind of bats them away or uses the Force to deflect them. So the best technique he could come up with was using flamethrowers or slug weapons. Jay, what happens when they try to use flamethrowers against Darth Vader?
Oh, well, he just kinda cracks him with the Force, and they're
Yeah.
completely ineffective whatsoever.
Yeah. He basically destroys the flamethrowers and sets the people using them on fire. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so, that doesn't work. And then Tarkin's making another number of observations about Darth Vader as we go through this. And he's talking about Vader and he says, but when he takes a life, he comes to life. In fact, it seems like the only reason he exists. How did that quote land with you?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's one of those things where, of course, we know that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, but the embodiment of just this pure Dark Lord of the Sith, that he essentially just sucks the life out of people in order for him to remain alive.
Mhm.
Just really, I mean, wow. That was huge. That was just like that just really hits.
Yes, is very, very observant of Tarkin
Yeah.
there because Vader, yeah, like you said, he takes the life of other people so that he lives himself. It's essentially what Tarkin said, and you said it another way, in that he's getting revenge against the galaxy.
Mhm.
He's taking out his hate on everybody because he's assembling power, and that's how he goes about doing it in this regard. And so this notion that why does he do the things he do? Well, it's like he seems to exist just to kill others, and that
Mhm.
and that is spooky. That makes Vader seem much more foreboding and imposing than he already is.
Yeah, for sure. And how about the fact that Tarkin understands and appreciates the fact that Vader likes to be up close and personal when he
Mhm,
makes his kills too?
mhm.
That was chilling.
Yeah, but if he can't, well, then he'll do it from the distance with the
Oh,
Force.
yeah, of course.
Crushing people's windpipe. He's like
Yeah.
very detailed, crushing people's windpipe, snapping their bones, and through the Force. And
And here's the thing, like, with Tarkin, it's obvious that he has studied Vader. You know
mhm.
what I mean? Like, he's gone through, and with Tarkin being such a strategist himself, he wants to know his enemy, he wants to know what he's up against. It's very Thrawn-like in that way, but, he has studied Vader, and so it was actually kinda compelling to me, the whole fact of how far of a distance he knew Vader was effective. You know what I mean? As far as being able to use the Force at a distance.
Yeah,
That was impressive.
and it's a slight nitpick on my part because, like, is there really a distance in which Vader's not effective? Because we've seen him strangle people over a holovid.
This is true.
And
This
so
is true.
I was like,
In Empire Strikes Back, yeah.
"Are you sure about that one, Tarkin?" And
But he
that's
was
the
also
case.
gone by that time, so
Yeah. So anyway, we also get this flashback of when they were stealing Darth Vader's lightsaber, and they just basically used a lasso to pull it out of his hand, and then Vader resorted to using the Force to do so. But Tarkin makes this observation that the only thing he's ever seen Vader have any type of an emotional attachment to is his lightsaber. He's noticed when they've been both of them have been in the room with the Emperor that Vader will occasionally let his hand stray to his lightsaber. And and you can see him, like, making that clutching motion with his hand as well. What'd you think about that?
yeah, and I think that a lot of that comes back. I was thinking to myself, that goes back to his Anakin days. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
In terms of, "This lightsaber is your life, Anakin, do not lose it," kind of thing. So that's been so ingrained in him, but I also think it's just an extension of who he is.
Well, I also think it's an extension of him wanting to kill Palpatine.
Ah, good call. Yeah, I like that.
It's a bit of impulse control. He lets his hand touch
Uh-huh.
the lightsaber, but he yearns to strike Palpatine down and take his place at some
Oh,
point.
yeah.
But
Oh,
he
yeah.
doesn't know everything that he needs to learn yet from Palpatine, so he resists that.
Ooh,
Um,
I like that.
yeah, so we get another scene here where they're heading into, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's kind of a mini canyon, and it's got this ability. It reflects sound and makes it
Mhm.
very difficult to determine where noise is coming from. And why that's important is that Tarkin has these two Chadrafan on his
Mhm.
team. And if you can't remember what a Chadrafan is, that's the little creature that gets all excited and is squealing as a drink is being given to it at the Mos Eisley Cantina. And they've got the kind of like the bat-like appearance on the
Yes.
face and the huge ears. And so they've got this ability to do the echolocation. And so you've got this character named Hard here, and his son, I think is called Sissian, or grandson. I can't remember if it's son or grandson. It doesn't matter. And so they're been able to pinpoint exactly where Vader is. Well, he gets around that in his new stealth cloak and leading to this canyon where the noises echoes from all over the place, and they can't pinpoint where Vader is, and he force chokes Hard here to
Mhm.
eliminate half the problem.
Right, yeah, because they were wanting to try to find him by his breathing apparatus, and it was echoing so much that they could, yeah, like you said, they just couldn't pinpoint him at all.
Hmm. Hmm. So along somewhere in here, we get this discussion how Vader had learned about Tarkin's past on Iriadu. And of course, that was explored in depth in the Tarkin novel that
Mhm.
James Luceno wrote, and how he had gone out to the Carrion Plateau, and there was that pike there, spike there that he would climb up, and he basically killed one of the apex predators in order to prove himself worthy as a Tarkin there. I don't know that we ever got an explanation that how Vader would have found out about that at this point.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Just the fact that it was tying together those 2, like, pieces of information, and I just thought that was cool.
Because I think this takes place before the Tarkin novel, because they do work together during part of that novel.
Mhm.
I'd have to check the timeline
Interesting.
on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, because maybe it did. If the Tarkin novel occurred before this, then that would explain this all perfectly. But I feel like those two really came to an understanding each other during the course of that novel.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things too with this particular comic that makes me think about the relationship that Tarkin has with Vader, even going forward, just because the fact that Tarkin is the only one that can really talk to Vader the way he talks to Vader. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So, and I think there's kind of like this mutual respect there
Oh,
as a result of
it's
this too.
very apparent
Oh, yeah.
in A New Hope.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because yeah, to your point, because the only other person that can talk to Vader like this is Emperor Palpatine
Mhm.
and get away with it. And Tarkin doesn't have the Force.
Right.
He's an old man now. He's a lethal old man, but he's still an old man.
Mhm.
But to your point, it's enough of this, Vader, release him as
Right.
you wish.
Exactly.
And and then talking to Vader as a comrade, their fire has gone out of the galaxy. You're all that's left of that religion. These are people that have had conversations at that point.
Mhm.
So this comic and where it ends up, I think, gets us a long way towards that
Yes.
point in the relationship.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly what I'm getting at.
Right. So they get out of this canyon and they get to the edge of this territory known as the Stormlands. And Yurga basically says, we can't go out there. That's suicide if we do. And we come to find out it's where a lot of lightning strikes and bad weather happens, and it's not a good place to be. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Vader strikes, but he was able to sneak up on them because he turned off his breathing apparatus so that
Mhm.
that would not give him away. And so Sissy and the other Chadra fan didn't even hear him coming until it was too late. Tarkin makes this observation that as Vader is attacking them, he doesn't have this on. So that means he's dying. And Tarkin's like, I didn't even know he could do that.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's
Like
killing
hashtag
us and dying in
respect.
the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Vader gets struck by lightning. And
Mhm.
even in that process, he proceeds to start force choking Tarkin, even though Tarkin is at this point thinking he's got the upper hand on him. And I love how he was thinking that how lucky he was to be
Yeah.
on his side and how lucky the Empire was to have Vader on
Yeah,
their
you just
side.
hit right on the ultimate lesson of this whole thing
Yeah.
here. So, Tarkin lures him out into the Stormlands, the background of the title, and basically says, lightning's going to strike the tallest things possible. So he just kind of curls himself up into a ball, and then Vader gets hit by lightning. Tarkin thinks he's won at that point, and then to honor the debt to Vader, he summons his ship, the Carrion Spike, which we also got to meet in the Tarkin novel. It also shows up in the Poe Dameron comic quite a bit
Mhm,
if you haven't read that.
mhm.
And but then Tarkin realizes Vader doesn't actually think he's lost, and he does start to strangle Tarkin. And I wrote down everything that Tarkin thinks at this point. He goes, Vader releases me, and I consider the power, the will of this man, his strength is incalculable. And every ounce of it, every drop is in service to the Empire and the grand ambitions of its ruler, his master MIO Palpatine. I drag in a ragged breath, and all I can think is how lucky we are.
Yeah.
And it's just that moment, that coming together. It's awesome. And what even makes it better is it comes after another observation that Tarkin makes just a couple pages before, when he's trying to figure out why it is that Vader asked Tarkin to try and hunt him down and kill him. And then he theorizes that Vader and his Inquisitors did too good a job wiping out the Jedi. And so there is nothing left for Vader to kill that Vader believes is worthy of him.
Mhm.
And because he knows of Tarkin and his abilities in hunting, that's why he came to Tarkin, because he lives to kill. He lives to hunt down things, and just this pointless, merciless killing of just anybody is not satisfying. Doesn't keep him going. It needs to be a worthy opponent. So yeah, I mean, this comic, it's a very, very quick read, but it speaks volumes about both these people.
Oh, for sure. It's phenomenal. And I just got lost in every single one of the panels too. So I know you mentioned who did all of the inking and the drawing and that type of thing, but wow, hands off, hats off to those people. And again, at the end here, when you see Vader almost dying, and then all of a sudden you see that hand twitch,
Mhm.
and you know exactly what's coming next. So, I mean, this comic just does such a great job of telling this story.
Yeah. The thing is, like, because earlier in the comic, there's that panel where you see Vader telling Tarkin what he wants, and it's like, and try to kill me, use lethal force. And Tarkin does that. He lures him out into this field so he gets hit by the lightning, and then he summons the ship, and it's like, okay, we'll get you on the ship, we'll get you fixed up. And Vader does not relent. You didn't kill him. And Vader, it's kind of interesting. There's an Infinities comic where Vader fights Darth Maul. And one part, Maul asks Vader, what is it that you hate so much that gives you this power? And Vader's response is myself.
Yes.
And I think we've talked about that before. But,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like that kind of rings true in this. Vader may hate himself. It makes him powerful, but he's not going to let anybody just end him.
Right.
It's he's going to keep going until someone like earns it.
Mhm.
And of course that's not ends up being what his actual fate is, but it's just that it's this engine that keeps going for Vader, as he generates all this dark side power through the death, the killing, and then the invoking his hate and having others trying to do the same thing to him, and it just keeps making him more and more powerful.
Right. Yeah, and it makes me wonder if, just in hindsight, and I know, of course, when A New Hope was created, this was not in existence, but, again, as we were saying with the whole respect thing and the way that Vader and Tarkin and kind of relate to each other and the way that Tarkin is able to talk to Vader, I wonder if the fact that he is Tarkin, that is just thinking about how lucky they are to have Vader on their side in the Empire, if that's one of the reasons why Tarkin becomes so incredibly overconfident in the Death Star, at a moment of triumph. I know it was his little pet project, as we
Hmm.
know from the very beginning when he took it away from Krennic, essentially. But, do you think that maybe that's one of the reasons why he just thought they were invincible, was because Vader was on their side and he's shown this power through this experience?
I think the bulk of that moment is his belief in the Empire and his refusal to believe that the rebellion with their little snub fighters could possibly find a way to blow this thing up
Mhm.
in that moment. However, going back from that a bit and looking at Rogue One,
Mhm.
when there's the attack on Scarif, when the rebellion is there, and Tarkin is basically sending the Death Star there, but he says contact Lord Vader. He knew the power that he was getting ready to unleash on the rebels there.
Oh, yeah. Oh gosh, and the hallway scene. Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, Vader shows up in a Star Destroyer and a ship
Mhm.
that was going into lightspeed crashes right into it. Then Vader decimates what's left of the rebel fleet that's still there with that Star Destroyer. And then, yeah, the hallway scene
Oh,
on
man.
that. He just brought in a nuclear weapon
Right?
to handle the rebellion there. And Tarkin knew exactly what was going to happen once Vader showed up.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this just ties that together so well. Oh, I
Mhm.
love it.
Yeah,
Remarkable.
it's it's hard to make this comic sound as amazing as it is by audibly describing it. You have to read it. And so if you haven't
Mhm.
done so, you didn't take our advice about reading this before you listen to this episode, because we've been talking about it for a couple episodes now. You definitely should go back and check it out, because um it is just, again, one of my favorite one shots,
Yeah.
essentially, stories. It's not part of a larger story arc in there. I mean, it's part of the second volume of Darth Vader comics from Marvel, and it's fantastic. But Charles Soule just got Vader and wrote an incredible story about not only him but Tarkin as well.
Mhm.
This story spoke volumes about both of them.
Oh, I agree. It's a spectacular piece of work for sure.
Yeah, Tarkin's arrogance kind of got brought down a notch by the end of this issue.
Indeed. It
So,
did.
all right, any last minute observations on this before we wrap it up?
Oh, I don't think so. It's just such a ride. It's such a good comic.
Yeah, this one's fantastic, and I try and sing his praises every chance I get. And so, yeah, well, we'll have to find some more Darth Vader comics, because that's one of our favorites. It's been one of our favorites to talk about over the
Oh,
years.
yeah, for
So,
sure.
Okay, well, with that, then I'll just say thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of Darth Vader number 18. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if so, then make sure you hit subscribe to Podcast Stardust on your podcatcher choice, and you'll get our future discussion of Star Wars comics. We do come back to them from time to time, not as often as we like, but we do come back to them. I'd also like to remind you that you can find all past episodes of the show over on RichardZap.com. We have discussed our other Darth Vader comics in the past, so you can find those episodes in our library. And while you're at RichardZap, you can find some other great podcasts covering everything from the MCU and DC to Dune, Star Trek, and more. And we really are appreciative of your support that comes in the form of 5-star ratings, likes, and such on your wherever you find this podcast, whether it's on YouTube, your podcatcher of choice, Spotify. And we love it when you share the show and your favorite episodes on social media with your friends. So, Jay, with those things in mind, where people do all these things?
Absolutely. So it's easy to do. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Podcast Stardust. And we also have our Pinterest boards that you can check out for all kinds of fun things, including a whole comic book section. So I'll have to make sure I add this one to that. And we also have our 2 YouTube outlets. So we have the regular YouTube and YouTube Music, where you can head over, like, subscribe, and also leave comments and interact with us. And if you want to discuss this episode of Podcast Stardust or any other, you can also head to our Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server, where you can chat with us in real time. And if you'd like to do that, you can hit up the link in our show notes. And also in our show notes is our TeePublic store link, where you can pick up one of 7 different show logo designs that's available on everything from home goods to apparel and all things in between. And also in our show notes, we got lots of stuff in our show notes. We have our referral for Saber Masters, which is a 2-for-1 deal on the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0. And you can get an extra $10 off by hitting up the code Stardust in your checkout. And that will get you that extra $10 off and also helps to support the show. And so Dennis and I really love our lightsabers. And so we know that you will too. So once again, hit those links in our show notes, or you could just go to sabermasters.com. So with that, Dennis, why don't you fill us in on your other podcast adventures that you have going on right now?
So if you're into Star Trek, then check out Warp Trails, which is the podcast hosted by myself and my wife, Beth. And we are talking about season 5 Discovery currently, but we've talked about Lower Decks, Picard, and Strange New World as well. So we're pretty much devoted to the shows that are coming out on Paramount Plus. The trick is it is only on the RetroZap Podcast Network feed. So just go to your podcatcher of choice, look for RetroZap, and you can find all episodes there. You can also go to retrozap.com. Warp Trails has its own page, and it's really easy to find all the episodes once you do that. Jay, what is the latest in cosplay?
All right. Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And I'm over there all the time, just posting tons of cosplay fun as myself as the fourth sister, Ahsoka, Hera from both the Rebel series and the Ahsoka series, as well as my new original concept Mandalorian. And I'm also Weird Barbie and a lot of other things too. So I just have a ton of fun with it. So once again, that is at j.snipscosplay.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Friday, we'll be getting into Star Wars news. And then on Monday, we'll be diving into Tales of the Empire. So we're going to have 2 episodes on that. We'll be handling Barra Sophie in one episode and then Morgan Elsbeth in the other. So thanks for listening to episode 726 of Podcast Stars, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.